You know, nuclear war was once considered a very real possibility, and governments around the world invested huge resources into building facilities that could outlast the unthinkable. So today we're going to take a look at 15 of the most amazing facilities that can survive a nuclear war. Let's start with number 15, the D6 Metro 2 system. Hidden beneath Moscow is a reported secret transportation and shelter network often referred to as the Metro 2. It's officially known as the D6, and the system's long been rumored to exist alongside the city's regular metro line. Now, unlike the public subway, Metro 2 is said to serve as a hardened command and control route for the Russian government and the military, specifically designed during the Cold War with nuclear survivability in mind. Most information about D6 remains classified, but multiple sources, including declassified CIA documents and accounts from former Soviet engineers, support its existence. Now, what sets it apart from the ordinary metro there is the depth and the hardening of it. While the public subway lines are already among the world's deepest, Cold War planning called for shelters capable of withstanding nuclear blast shockwaves and fallout. The construction involved reinforced tunnels and blast doors, with ventilation systems to protect against radioactive dust. Now, the secrecy surrounding Metro 2 makes it a bit difficult to determine its current condition. Some Russian officials have publicly denied its existence, while others have admitted to underground facilities. Well, urban explorers claim to have found sealed access points, but reliable confirmation is scarce. If Metro 2 remains active, it would represent one of the largest urban nuclear defense facilities ever built. Its legacy does reflect the intense anxieties during the Cold War, when nuclear survivability wasn't theoretical, but a central part of your national strategy. Though modern Russia's use of the system is unclear, its reputed scale and hardening make it one of the most notable facilities that could withstand a nuclear conflict. Number 14. Beijing West Hills Command Bunker. On the western outskirts of Beijing, there's a series of mountains that have long been associated with Chinese military and government infrastructure. Among them is the West Hills area, which is believed to house a large underground command bunker built during the Cold War to ensure continuity of government. While information is limited and of course tightly controlled, enough credible sources exist to confirm that the West Hill Bunker represents one of China's most important facilities. It was reportedly constructed during the 1960s and 70s, a period when China was not only expanding its nuclear arsenal but also bracing for a potential confrontation with both the US and the Soviet Union. Western intelligence has described the facility as a huge underground complex designed to withstand nuclear attack and provide a secure command post for the Chinese leadership. Some reports do suggest that it's connected to Beijing's network of underground tunnels, which offers multiple points of access and potentially linking it with transportation systems. It was designed not merely to protect a small leadership cadre, but to serve as a functioning command and control center, maintaining control over military forces in the event of a nuclear war. This role places it in the same category as hardened command centers in the US and Russia. Though much of the information remains classified, the occasional satellite imagery analysis and intelligence disclosures have reinforced its relevance. It is often considered central to a broader strategy that has consistently invested in underground facilities, from missile silos to tunnels for road mobile launchers, which reflects the long-standing emphasis on survivability. It shows how major powers have invested heavily in ensuring that, even under the most extreme conditions, command and control can survive. Number 13. The Raytheon Joint Military Headquarters. Inside a mountain near Bodo in northern Norway is the Raytheon Joint Military Headquarters, a Cold War-era facility that continues to play a role in Norway's defense. It was built in the 1960s, when tensions between NATO and the Soviet Union were at their height. Raytheon was specifically designed to survive a nuclear attack. Its choice of location was strategic. Northern Norway lies close to the Arctic and within reach of the Kola Peninsula, home to much of the Soviet Union's naval power, including nuclear submarines. In the event of a conflict, the region would likely have been a front line. The decision to embed Norway's command headquarters deep within a mountain here provided natural shielding. The complex consists of a network of tunnels and rooms blasted out of solid rock, and like other hardened Cold War facilities, it features blast-resistant doors, independent power supplies, and advanced ventilation systems. During the Cold War, it functioned as NATO's northernmost operational command post, working closely with Allied forces to track Soviet activity in the Arctic and North Atlantic. This design was a direct response to the nuclear threat, ensuring that Norway's command structure could not easily be disabled by a single strike. The facility has remained in use long after the Cold War ended. Today it houses the Norwegian Joint Headquarters that oversees all branches of the armed forces and coordinates with NATO allies. It does show how smaller NATO countries invested in survivable infrastructure during the nuclear era, and while less is known than facilities in the US or Russia, it does represent the same principle, the belief that survival and continuity of command were essential even in the face of nuclear war. Number 12. The Gotthard Road Tunnel Civil Defense. Switzerland. It's long been associated with civil defense planning, particularly during the Cold War, when the threat of nuclear war was ever present in Europe. Among the country's most notable preparations was the adaptation of key infrastructure into dual-use facilities capable of serving as fallout shelters. The Gotthard Road Tunnel, one of the longest highway tunnels in the world, exemplifies that approach. Though best known as a major transportation artery through the Swiss Alps, it's also been outfitted with features that allow it to serve as a massive civil defense shelter in the event of a nuclear conflict. The original Gotthard Tunnel, completed in 1980, stretches nearly 10 miles under the mountains, connecting the towns of Göttingen in the north and Airolo in the south. Built to take on heavy traffic between northern and southern Europe, the tunnel was constructed with Swiss defense policy in mind. This meant not only building small residential shelters there, but also converting large infrastructure projects into survivable facilities. Civil defense engineers added blast doors and partitions that could seal off sections of the tunnel, turning it into a shelter for tens of thousands of people. Large air filtration units were included, capable of removing radioactive particles and chemical agents. And during exercises conducted in the Cold War period, Swiss authorities demonstrated how traffic could be halted and the tunnel reconfigured. Vehicles could be cleared, partitions closed, and civilians moved inside. Supplies of food, water, and medical equipment were pre-positioned, ensuring the ability to house evacuees for extended periods. And unlike many bunkers that were purely government-focused, the Gotthard Tunnel was intended as a mass civilian refuge. The tunnel's dual-use role wasn't an isolated case either. Throughout Switzerland, infrastructure projects from tunnels to parking garages were adapted for civil defense purposes. After the Cold War, though, interest in civil defense declined across much of Europe, but Switzerland maintained many of its shelters, including those in major tunnels. The Gotthard Tunnel itself was supplemented by the Gotthard Base Tunnel, a rail project completed in 2016 that is now the longest railway tunnel in the world. While primarily designed for transport, the tradition of incorporating civil defense considerations into the large infrastructure has persisted. Its ability to house tens of thousands of people in a survivable environment made it one of the largest nuclear defense facilities of its time. Even today, with tensions periodically resurfacing, the tunnel's design is a reminder of how infrastructure can be adapted, not only for commerce but for survival. Number 11. Muska Naval Base, Sweden. On the outskirts of Stockholm, Sweden, beneath the granite islands of the archipelago, lies one of the most remarkable naval facilities in the world, the Muska Naval Base. Built during the Cold War and carved directly into the bedrock, Muska was designed to provide Sweden's navy with a secure, blast-resistant base that could survive even in the event of a nuclear war. Construction began in the 1950s as Sweden sought to harden its defenses in the face of growing east-west tensions. The Soviet Union's Baltic Fleet was only a short distance away, and Sweden, though officially neutral, understood that its strategic location meant it could be drawn into conflict. The solution was to build a naval base unlike any other, one that would be hidden, protected, and capable of operating even under a nuclear threat. Engineers blasted more than 1.5 million cubic meters of rock to create a massive underground complex on the island of Muska. At its heart are 3 submarine docks, each large enough to house Sweden's submarines and surface vessels. The docks are accessed through tunnels wide enough for naval ships, and the entrances are protected by blast doors. The granite surrounding the base, too, provides some natural shielding against conventional and nuclear attacks, while internal systems were designed to be self-sufficient. The project of this scale was immense, and its secrecy was carefully maintained. For decades, Muska served as the main operating base for Sweden's submarines. It was invisible to surveillance and protected from attack. After the Cold War, though, the base was partially mothballed as defense budgets shrank and the perceived threat diminished. However, in recent years, as tensions with Russia have risen again in the Baltic region, Sweden has reactivated and modernized the facility. The base is once again in active use, supporting naval operations, and serves as a symbol of Sweden's commitment to defense readiness. Today, though, it remains one of the most impressive underground facilities anywhere in the world. The submarine docks, hidden inside a mountain, are a reminder of Cold War engineering and the lengths to which nations went to ensure survival. Number 10. The Kovinsky Kamen Command Center in Russia. Deep in the Ural Mountains lies a site that analysts believe to be one of Russia's most hardened military installations, the Kovinsky Kamen Command Center. It was built in the late Soviet period and brought online in the 1990s. The facility is thought to be a core component of their nuclear command and control system. Open-source intelligence and U.S. Department of Defense assessments suggest that Kovinsky was designed as a response to advances in American military technology, particularly Earth-penetrating weapons and missile defense systems. The depth of the facility and construction are believed to make it resistant to even nuclear-armed bunker-busting munitions. Reports suggest the facility sits hundreds of meters underground with extensive reinforcement and blast-resistant doors. It's also said to contain advanced communication systems designed to ensure the continuity of their nuclear command network. But one reason it's attracted some attention in Western defense analysis is its possible connection to Russia's perimeter or dead hand system. This is an automatic retaliatory mechanism designed to ensure a nuclear response, even if leadership is incapacitated. While the exact operational role of Kovinsky is not public, U.S. intelligence assessments in the early 2000s noted its activation and described it as a strategic command post. What can be said with certainty, though, is that Kovinsky represents a type of facility that was designed for nuclear war scenarios. Unlike many Cold War bunkers now decommissioned or turned into museums, Kovinsky is believed to remain active and integrated into their defense infrastructure. The secrecy surrounding the site means that much remains unknown. Its strategic purpose makes it one of the few facilities in the world specifically engineered to survive a nuclear strike and continue on. Number 9. The Sonnenberg Tunnel Shelter in Switzerland. Hey, look at that, we're going back to Switzerland again. Well, among the most ambitious civil defense projects of the Cold War was the conversion of the Sonnenberg motorway tunnel in Lucerne to one of the largest fallout shelters in the world. While Switzerland is known for its extensive network, the Sonnenberg project stood out for its scale. Built in the 1970s, it was designed to house up to 20,000 people, which protected them from the effects of nuclear war in a structure originally intended for cars. The tunnel itself, part of the A2 motorway, goes for about 1.5 kilometers through the hills overlooking Lucerne. When it was planned, Swiss authorities recognized an opportunity. The tunnel's thick rock covering and reinforced concrete construction made it an ideal candidate for dual use. The shelter design was comprehensive. 2 enormous blast doors, each weighing 350 tons, could be closed to seal the tunnel against shockwaves and radiation. Inside, partitions were used to divide the roadway into sleeping areas, communal spaces, and storage, and ventilation systems included high-capacity filters. Water and food supplies were stockpiled too, along with medical facilities and even basic sanitation systems. In the late 1980s, the focus of Swiss civil defense shifted towards smaller, more manageable shelters. Though no longer maintained at its full capacity, elements of the shelter remain in place, and the blast doors are still visible. In a world where most civil defense planning focused on leadership continuity or small-scale bunkers, the Sonnenberg tunnel stood out as one of the largest nuclear shelters ever constructed. Number 8. The Helsinki Underground Civil Defense Network. Few cities in the world can match Helsinki in terms of preparedness for a nuclear attack. Beneath the Finnish capital lies a network of rock-carved shelters that are integrated directly into the urban fabric, capable of protecting the entire city's population of over 600,000. This system is unique in its scale and comprehensiveness, and it reflects Finland's historical position on the front line between East and West, and its determination to ensure civilian survival in the event of a war. Beginning in the 1960s, the city embarked on a program to build dual-use facilities. These are structures that could serve civilian and military purpose. Today, the network includes over 5,500 shelters with space for every resident of the city. Now, the shelters aren't barren bunkers, but they're integrated into the daily life. Many double as car parks, sports facilities, ice rinks, or even swimming pools. During peacetime, they serve ordinary civic functions, and in wartime, they can be sealed off within hours with blast doors, air filtration systems, and independent power. They're carved into solid bedrock. It's a feature that gives Helsinki a natural advantage. Engineers enhance the natural shielding with reinforced concrete linings, blast doors, and high-efficiency ventilation. But unlike many Cold War-era shelters that have been decommissioned, Helsinki's network is actively maintained and regularly tested. The government invests in civil defense as part of its broader national security strategy. Maps and signage throughout the city identify shelter locations, making them easily accessible in an emergency. This comprehensiveness in Helsinki's system is pretty rare. Most countries abandoned mass shelter programs after the Cold War, focusing instead on small-scale bunkers for government continuity. Today, though, this network covers about 10 million square meters of underground space. Living in a country historically caught between great powers, the Finns have long emphasized resilience. The underground network embodies that philosophy, showing a determination to ensure not only government continuity, but civilian protection. In the event of a nuclear conflict, few urban populations anywhere in the world would be as well prepared as Helsinki's. Moving on to number 7, Jelgava Air Base in Croatia. On the border between Croatia and Bosnia are the ruins of one of Europe's most ambitious Cold War military projects, the Jelgava Air Base. It was built by Yugoslavia in the 1950s and 60s. It was, at the time, the largest underground air base in Europe. It's known locally as Objekat 505. Jelgava was designed not only to protect aircraft from conventional attack, but also to survive and remain functional in the event of a nuclear war. The site was chosen for its location beneath a mountain, a rugged limestone mountain offering natural protection and proximity to the borders of NATO and Warsaw Pact territories. Given Yugoslavia's position as a non-aligned state caught between East and West, its leaders invested heavily in survivable infrastructure. The underground complex itself contained over 3.5 kilometers of reinforced tunnels, large enough to house dozens of jet aircraft, including MiG-21s. The tunnels were protected by concrete up to 4 meters thick, and they were capable of withstanding the shock of nuclear blasts. Entrances were sealed with armored blast doors, and aircraft could taxi directly from the runways into the mountain. Above ground, it featured a network of 5 runways, allowing rapid dispersal and recovery of aircraft. The base also incorporated radar and surveillance stations, part of Yugoslavia's broader integrated air defense network. During its peak, it represented the pinnacle of Yugoslav military capability. It embodied the country's strategy of self-reliance. However, the base also reflected the immense costs of Cold War military infrastructure. The construction strained Yugoslavia's finances, and its maintenance was equally expensive. In the 1990s, as Yugoslavia collapsed into conflict, Jelgava became a casualty of war. In 1992, retreating forces deliberately destroyed the base with massive explosives to prevent it from falling into enemy hands. Today, though, it's abandoned. Its ruined runways and collapsed entrances a reminder of Cold War ambition. Number 6. Kelvedon Hatch Street Nuclear Bunker. Hidden beneath an unassuming farmhouse in the Essex countryside is one of the most important remnants of Britain's Cold War civil defense network, the Kelvedon Hatch Secret Nuclear Bunker. It was built in the early 1950s and operational for much of the Cold War. It was designed as a regional seat of government capable of coordinating emergency operations. Unlike many shelters focused solely on military command, this one was intended to provide continuity of governance. Construction began in 1952 as part of Britain's radar defense system. Beneath the modest-looking farmhouse, deliberately chosen as camouflage, engineers excavated a 3-story bunker extending 38 meters underground. The bunker was built to accommodate around 600 personnel, including government officials, military staff, and support workers. In the event of a nuclear attack, it would have functioned as the headquarters and emergency administration across the southeast of England, including London, if the capital were destroyed. One cool feature of the bunker was its communications. It was linked to the UK's broader emergency radio networks, which enabled it to broadcast instructions to the population. The emphasis on communication here reflected the need to maintain order in a chaotic post-strike environment. Like other Cold War facilities, this one reflected the sobering assumptions of the time. It was not designed to protect the general population, but to preserve the governance. In Britain's emergency planning, the public would rely on small-scale shelters or simply protect and survive measures in their homes. By the 1990s, following the end of the Cold War, the facility was decommissioned. Unlike many hardened sites that were sealed off or destroyed, Kelvedon Hatch was preserved and converted into a museum, and today visitors can walk through the blast doors and explore the operations rooms. Though it was never tested in war, Kelvedon Hatch is an example to the seriousness with which governments prepared for nuclear conflict. In the context of nuclear survivability, it does represent not only engineering ingenuity but the stark realities of Cold War planning. Leadership and continuity were prioritized, even if the wider population faced grave risk. Number 5. The Burlington Bunker, United Kingdom. Alright, we're going to stay in the UK for a bit. In the quiet countryside of Wiltshire, beneath the small town, is one of the most extraordinary facilities ever constructed in the UK, the Burlington Bunker, also known as the Central Government War Headquarters, or the GCWHQ. It was built during the Cold War and capable of accommodating 4,000 people for months. It represented the ultimate expression of the continuity of government principle. The site had industrial origins. During World War II, Corsham's huge Bathstone quarries were repurposed as safe storage for munitions and other military material. The success of these underground facilities inspired Cold War planners to expand and convert parts of the complex into a fully functional government command center. Burlington was pretty big. It was over 35 acres of underground space spread across a lot of tunnels. It contained offices, dormitories, kitchens, medical centers, laundries, and even a BBC broadcasting studio. A telephone exchange ensured that communications would continue, while specialized equipment allowed secure lines to other surviving military and government sites. Being located over 100 feet beneath solid limestone did provide natural protection. Additional reinforcement, blast doors, and filtered ventilation systems ensured the survivability in the face of nearby detonations. But the intended occupants included the Prime Minister, the senior ministers, military commanders, and civil servants necessary to maintain governance. The site had a provision for royal family members if they could be evacuated in time. The population was deliberately limited to those deemed essential for government continuity. Today, much of Burlington is abandoned, though some parts remain under Ministry of Defense control. Photographs and reports from visits reveal the eerie remains of an underground world frozen in time. Rows of rotary telephones, dormitories with metal bunk beds, and offices lined with 1950s-era furniture. Number 4. CFS Carp, Canada. In Carp, Ontario, west of Canada's capital city of Ottawa, sits the Diefenbunker, Canada's most famous Cold War facility. Officially named the Canadian Forces Station, or CFS, Carp, this underground bunker was constructed between 1959 and 61 as part of Canada's Continuity of Government Plan. Nicknamed the Diefenbunker after Prime Minister John Diefenbunker, who authorized its construction, it remains one of the best preserved examples of Cold War bunkers in the world. Canada, as a close NATO ally of the United States and a key player in NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, recognized the need for survivable infrastructure. Carp was chosen as the site because of its geology and its proximity to Ottawa, allowing quick relocation of leadership. The building goes down about 4 stories, built with about 1.5 meters of reinforced concrete and shielded by layers of earth and rock. Inside, the bunker had extensive radiation shielding, including decontamination areas to prevent fallout from entering. Now, officially, it was intended to house up to 530 people, including the Prime Minister, cabinet members, military staff, and essential government officials. It could operate independently for about 30 days with diesel generators providing power, air filtration systems removing any radioactive dust, and underground wells supplying water. Throughout the Cold War, the bunker was maintained in secrecy. It was staffed by military personnel and ready for immediate activation. It was never used, though, in a crisis, but remained operational until 1994, when it was decommissioned following the collapse of the Soviet Union. By then, advances in weapon technology and shifts in strategic thinking had rendered many Cold War bunkers obsolete. In 1997, it was opened to the public as Canada's Cold War Museum. Today, visitors can explore the blast doors, dormitories, and command rooms, and exhibits provide a vivid picture of Cold War planning, the nuclear threat, and the measures taken to prepare for it. Number 3. The Barnton Quarry Nuclear Bunker in Scotland. On the western edge of Edinburgh, there's a site that few passers-by would recognize as being one of Britain's most important Cold War installations. Today, the remains look battered, with the ruined concrete and broken structures visible all around. But hidden beneath the surface lies the Barnton Quarry Nuclear Bunker, a hardened underground command facility. Built initially in the 1950s as part of Britain's radar defense system and later adapted into a regional seat of government, it encapsulates the scale of anxiety during the Cold War. The Cold War period was marked by rapidly escalating technology and fear. In the years immediately after the Second World War, Britain recognized the threat was no longer from conventional bombers, but from jet-powered aircraft and eventually intercontinental ballistic missiles. Construction began in the early 1950s, and what emerged was an enormous underground facility. Its initial function was to serve as a radar control station. Inside, staff worked in windowless rooms and surrounded by humming machinery, feeding information into Britain's broader air defense network. By the late 50s and 60s, though, the nature had shifted. Long-range bombers were still a concern, but the advent of nuclear-tipped missiles meant that defense could no longer rest on radar interception alone. Engineers refitted the bunker with new systems designed not just for radar operations but government continuity. What emerged was a self-contained underground command post. The interior was expanded to include dormitories, kitchens, water supplies, and independent power generators. The infrastructure was upgraded as well, with radio equipment, telephone exchanges, and telex lines, allowing contact with other places and with what remained of central government in London. Every feature was designed with the grim assumption that much of the United Kingdom would be destroyed in a nuclear strike, yet officials would still need to coordinate survival, relief, and ultimately recovery. Life inside such a bunker, had it ever been activated in wartime, would have been harsh and claustrophobic. The rooms were cramped, the lighting artificial, and the air filled with the constant noise of ventilation systems. The bunker wasn't designed to protect ordinary citizens. Like most Cold War civil defense planning in Britain, it did prioritize continuity of government then, rather than mass survival. Number 2. Spielberg Castle bunkers in the Czech Republic. At first glance, the Spielberg Castle in Czech Republic seems like an unlikely candidate for inclusion in this list of facilities designed to survive a nuclear war. This medieval fortress perched on a hill above the city has a story that stretches back to the 13th century. Yet beneath its historic courtyards and thick stone walls lies a set of Cold War bunkers constructed in the mid-20th century. These bunkers, carved into the hill and reinforced with modern engineering, were intended to serve as a command post. Today, they remain preserved as a unique intersection of the medieval world and Cold War military history. The origins of Spielberg Castle go back to the reign of King Ottokar II, who ordered its construction in the 13th century. Over time, it evolved into a formidable fortress, its walls expanded and strengthened to withstand sieges. By the 20th century, it was already layered with centuries of history and symbolism, and when the Cold War erupted after World War II, Czechoslovakia found itself on the front line. Military planners looked at Spielberg's commanding position and solid hilltop foundations and saw an opportunity to adapt the site. In the 1950s and 60s, engineers began constructing bunkers beneath the hill. The bunkers consisted of reinforced tunnels and chambers dug deep into the bedrock. The internal layout included command rooms, storage for supplies, communication centers, dormitories, and essential systems like water, power, and ventilation. Like similar facilities built elsewhere in the Eastern Bloc, these bunkers reflected a grim situation that nuclear war was not only possible, but something to be planned for in detail. Life inside the bunkers, had they ever been used, would have been austere. The rooms were functional, built for survival rather than comfort. Generators provided power independent of the city grid, which ensured lights and communication could function, even if the surface was devastated. For the local population, though, the existence of these bunkers wasn't widely known during the Cold War. The castle above remained a landmark and a museum, open to the public, while the facilities beneath were kept secret. Only those with clearance knew the extent of the bunkers or their intended role in nuclear preparedness. The juxtaposition was striking. Tourists could stroll through medieval halls above ground, unaware that beneath their feet are chambers intended to survive a nuclear apocalypse. The construction of the bunkers and command posts was therefore not an abstract exercise, but a practical necessity. Cities like Brno and their industrial and strategic importance were seen as potential targets for nuclear strikes. Ensuring that local and regional command could survive was central to their military planning. Number 1. The Delhi Metro Integrated Nuclear Shelters in India. So when people think of nuclear survivability, their minds often go to these remote mountain bunkers or hidden military installations. Less obvious, but equally significant, are urban transit systems that have been deliberately engineered to double as nuclear shelters. This integration of survivability into everyday infrastructure reflects both the realities of regional security and the practicality of designing shelters where people already live and work. The Delhi Metro opened in 2002, but from the outset, engineers and planners working with security officials were instructed to include designs that could be adapted for emergencies. The aim was to ensure that, in the event of an attack, large numbers of civilians could be quickly moved underground into spaces strong enough to provide protection. Thick, reinforced concrete walls, blast-resistant construction methods, and multiple sealed entrances allowed them to function not only as transit hubs, but as potential fallout shelters. Many stations are located more than 20 meters below the surface, with some deeper still. That depth, combined with the heavy overburden, provides substantial shielding against both radiation and shockwaves. Capacity, though, is another important factor. Delhi's population is huge, with over 20 million people in the metro area, and no single shelter system could realistically protect everyone. Yet the metro, with its hundreds of stations, can accommodate tens of thousands in short notice. For Delhi, this means that during peacetime, the metro serves as a lifeline for transport, while in wartime it could become a lifeline for survival. It's important to note that while the metro provides substantial protection, it's not a guarantee of safety in the event of a direct strike. No civil shelter can promise complete survivability against a nuclear detonation at close range. However, the system's hardening makes it a credible refuge against fallout, blast effects at a distance, and other secondary dangers. In that sense, it functions as a realistic, pragmatic component of India's wider civil defense. The Delhi Metro stands as a symbol of how modern cities can combine infrastructure development with civil defense, and it shows an understanding that survivability in the nuclear age doesn't always come from isolated mountain complexes, but can also be built into the very fabric of urban life. By embedding nuclear protection into a transit system, Delhi has created one of the world's largest and most practical civil shelter networks, an everyday machine of survival hidden in plain sight.